So recently, all the Chinese fountain pens that I've been reviewing seemingly have been pretty good, and don't let that create the false illusion that all the Chinese fountain pens are now really good, because the pen that I'm going to review today is an example of a fountain pen that still needs a little bit of work. So this is the Lambitao 3059, oh wait, no, sorry, that's a TWSBI Eco. This is the Lambitao 3059. So yeah, this is quite obviously a TWSBI Eco clone that is sprung up from the brand Lambitao, and I haven't really heard about them until I first saw this pen. And to call this a TWSBI Eco clone is really more so saying this is a genetically inferior TWSBI clone, because yes, it might be a clone, but this certainly ain't no TWSBI Eco. I'll certainly get into the reasons why, but let me just say, cost-wise, this pen only cost me about $2.80, which is more than 10 times less than the TWSBI. You're paying about $28 for one of these pens, and it's a piston pen like the TWSBI, so it's very similar to the Wingsung 3008 that I had on last week, also a piston pen. So these are the pens that I'm going to be comparing it to today. So how does this pen stack up? Well, let's find out then. Now before I get into the actual review of the pen, I just want to come out and state that normally when I review a Chinese pen, it's usually the body of the pen that is really good, but the nib is where the pen is let down. However, for this pen, it's really the body of the pen that lets the whole side down, and the nib is actually where it excels. So with that said, let's get into the specs of the pen. So capped, we're looking at about a pen that's 14.3 centimeters long. Uncapped, you're looking at about 13.4 centimeters, and posted, you're looking at about 17 centimeters long. In terms of the weight, it is a little bit lighter than TWSBI Eco, coming in at about 17 grams capped, and a little bit less than that when it's uncapped. So in terms of the length, this is like a TWSBI Eco, however it's slightly longer than a TWSBI Eco, so you're able to write with this pen unposted, and I'm pretty sure pretty much anyone will be able to do that. However, unlike the TWSBI Eco, because it is a little bit lighter, you can post this pen and write with it posted without it feeling really back heavy. One of the issues that I have with the TWSBI Eco, which is why I never write with this pen posted. However, I can do it with this pen. Now in terms of ergonomics, this is one of the things that really lets this pen down. The reason being is, on the grip, they've tried to go for a Lamy style grip. And here's the thing, I don't like Lamy style grips, but I'm able to use them. However, on this pen, instead of doing 2 straight facets, what they've done is 3, like a triangle, and left the sides still curved, which might be okay, but it's the way that they've located the facets. It is really uncomfortable to use in the way that they want you to use it. And that is one of the reasons why I really don't like using this pen, which is really unfortunate, but from reading of quite a few other reviews of this pen, I'm not the only person to have said that about this pen's ergonomics. Now if we look at the body as a whole, this pen is made out of plastic. I'm not exactly sure what type of plastic it's made out of. It feels somewhat well made. It obviously feels cheaper than a TWSBI or a Lamy, but it feels alright. But you can certainly tell upon picking it up that it's not $28. In terms of scratch resistance, it's a little bit less scratch resistant than I'd expect. I haven't been using this pen as much as I'd use quite a few other pens, though it has picked up some light scratches, and it's faring a lot worse than the TWSBI. Also, for some reason, the folks over at Lambitao, when they were ripping off the TWSBI, wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this was their pen, so they've gone ahead and put 3059 on the barrel, the Lambitao logo, and the big letters Lambitao on the cap, which is rather ugly if I'm honest with you. Also, being a TWSBI Eco knockoff, we've got to talk about the fact that it is a piston filler pen. Now, this piston works fine. It's nothing special. It works just as well as these pens. It doesn't leak, though I've got to say the mechanism certainly does feel pretty cheap. It's very loose, even when it's not doing anything. It does wobble quite a bit, and it just feels a lot cheaper. One thing I will mention in terms of ink capacity is this pen offers a much smaller ink capacity than a TWSBI Eco. Even though that it is a longer pen, the piston takes up a larger volume of the barrel, and it offers a little bit more ink storage than the Wingsung 3008. Okay, now let's talk about the nib of the fountain pen. So the nib of this pen is really where this pen excels, but I can't really give Lambi-Tao credit for that, because when this pen arrived, it almost refused to work. So when I started using this pen, the lines were inconsistent. I mean, it would be completely wet for one line, then it would completely skip the next line. It was scratchy. It was not a good experience at all. So what I had to do was get some brass shim, and I had to shim the tines apart. I had to get some 12,000 grit sandpaper, wet and dry, and polish up the nib just to get it actually able to write and remove some of the scratchiness. However, once I did that, this pen became a pretty awesome writer. As you can see, it has a Lamy style nib, and it has a fine nib. And one of the cool things about it being a Lamy style nib is it means that you can use it with other Lamy style nibs, such as the Wingsung nibs, and of course, if the nib flat out refused to work, I could just use a proper Lamy nib. Now that I polished up the nib, it now works awesome, it's smooth, and it works well. Just a shame that it didn't come that way from the factory. However, I'm not the only person to have said that these pens need a little bit work done just to get them to write. So there's always that bit of a risk, and I think that can be put down just to quality control. Now, in terms of lines, you're getting a pretty fine line. It is more of a European fine, so a Japanese medium, but it writes well. In terms of line flex, you're not going to get much. These Lamy style nibs never offer much flex, and there's no breather hole, so you're not going to get much flex at all. In terms of reliability of the ink, this is a moderately reliable pen. This pen will continue writing even for, long writing stints. However, sometimes when I put this pen down just for an hour or so, come back, it has the tendency to hard start. Not every time, but sometime. In terms of wetness, this is a moderately wet pen. Nothing to scream about, but it gets the job done. Anyway, let's just get over to a writing sample. Alright, welcome to the writing sample for the Lambi-Tao. Lambi-Tao 3059. This is a fine nib that, remember, I have somewhat ground myself. The ink that I am using is food colouring, not even joking, because I have run out of turquoise ink. So this is food colouring. However, it reacts pretty much the same as, Lamy turquoise, very similar. So let's get a quote underway. Alright then, that was a wonderful writing sample, and it went pretty much flawlessly. It worked pretty well. No issues there. The nib was smooth, not much line variation, but it was able to write, and that's the key thing because it's a big improvement over what it was. In terms of line variation, you're not going to get much natural line variation at all, and of course not much line flexing. So I'm slowly building up pressure, and that's as much pressure as I dare put down. The only difference you're going to get is more ink is being deposited when you press down harder. So this is no pressure, and this is a lot of pressure. Darker because there's more ink being put down. So if we just have a look, you're not going to get much at all. In terms of wetness, as I said, moderately wet pen, which is pretty good. No issues whatsoever there. Now in terms of reverse writing, it's alright. I didn't grind it, but you can do it, but it's not amazing at all. Now in terms of writing, I'll compare it to the TWSBI Eco. This is the TWSBI Eco. Much nicer writing from the Eco, though it is a medium nib and it is really nice to write with. You're not getting much feedback. It's pretty good, but it is, remember, more than 10 times the price to this pen, and this pen works pretty well. A little bit more scratching. This is the 3059. A little bit more scratch from it. Though remember, you're getting this awful ergonomics but remember, you're getting the ergonomics here, which is making it really annoying to write with. Now, if we compare it to a more similar pen in price, the Wingsung 3008, you're getting a pen that is, this is an extra fine, so it's a little bit hard to compare it to a fine, but ergonomically it's much nicer to write with. And of course there's a little bit more ink in here, and it just feels a lot better built. Though it is a lot more scratching.